In this video, I'll provide you with an overview of app design best practices and the essentials for building a user-centered app design in Adobe XD. So for an example app that we can build today, let's say we're creating an app that collects data for a research study examining the impact of meditation on heart rate to gain a deeper understanding of how relaxation techniques can impact the heart. So you can see I've created the branding and many of the assets already in Illustrator. I've also created a color palette for us to use. It's based on the Pantone color of the year, Ultraviolet. And the color palettes for Ultraviolet are available to download on the Pantone website as an ASE file, which can then be brought into Illustrator and worked with in the swatches panel. I then created my own palette from these palettes and created a brand new library in the Creative Cloud libraries with all of these colors. So now I'm going to go over to Adobe XD. And here we have the launch screen. And from here we can open a file. We can also open a Photoshop file and have XD translate this Photoshop file into an XD file, which is also a pretty cool feature. Or we can select from the many different size templates of a new file that Adobe XD provides for us. So there are mobile, tablet, web, and custom sizes that we can select. For the custom size, we can just simply enter in the size we need here to create a new file. For now, I'm going to go ahead and select the iPhone X template. And a new document opens with an artboard the size of an iPhone X screen. I can also add other artboards of different sizes to the same document. I'm going to go ahead and select the artboard tool here on the left in the Tools panel. And the Properties panel appears here on the right, and it is a contextual panel. So with the artboard tool selected, it shows us all the different sizes of common screens that we can easily incorporate into our document. So I could also do a design for an Android phone or for a web page, for example. I can go ahead and change the size by dragging at any of the handles, or go into the Properties panel here and change it manually. I can also draw using the artboard tool, create a new size artboard. I can change the orientation of the artboard to landscape by simply toggling the vertical and horizontal icons here. I can also create a scroll or turn the scroll off. And what this means is that if we have a viewport height of 400, let's say, at that point on our document, it will show where the scrolling will begin with this blue dotted line to guide us. Then when we're looking at the design proofs and prototypes later, we can actually see the device at that viewport height as the example and see what it looks like when it scrolls. For now, I'm going to go ahead and delete these extra artboards. And I'm going to work with our iPhone X size screen. I'm going to rename it Splash Screen simply by clicking on the title. Now, I can also add a grid to this if we need it for layout purposes. Here is a layout grid, and it's customizable, so we could change the column width if we want to, the gutter width, the margins, and more. We can also create a square grid, changing the square size as needed. For now, I'm going to go ahead and turn the grid off for this artboard. And I want to fill it with a color. So I'm going to first bring the colors in from my Illustrator document. I'm going to just go ahead and simply Command C all of these colors together to copy them, and Command V to paste them into my XD document. I'm going to go ahead and open the Assets panel here on the bottom left. And in the Assets panel, we can add colors, character styles, and symbols that we will use in our document. So I also added all of these colors to the Adobe Creative Cloud. So I could also open these by going to File and selecting Open CC Libraries. And here we have all of our colors available for us. So if I create an object and select a color from the Creative Cloud library, I can then add this color to our Assets panel. I'm going to deselect the border so that the gray doesn't get added as well. And now we have this color here for us to use in the Assets panel. I can also select all of the colors here that I copied in from Illustrator and simply select this plus symbol, and it will add all of the new colors here as well. Now it's also convenient to have some of these colors available to us in the Colors panel for us to use. So when I pasted these colors in together, even though the object wasn't grouped together in Illustrator, it came into XD as a grouped object. So first I'm going to do Shift-Command-G to ungroup them. Then I'm going to select a couple of specific colors, go into my color picker, and click this plus sign to add them here for easy access. And I'm just going to do this for a few of the colors. And this will be convenient to us later. Now I'm going to go ahead and select my artboard. And here in the Properties panel, you can see the area called Appearance with a color fill. So in Adobe XD, you can actually fill the artboard with a color, which is very convenient. You don't need to actually draw a shape on top of it to fill it with a color. So I'm going to go ahead and select this color fill, and I'm going to choose one of the colors here in our color picker. Now I'd actually like this to be a gradient instead of a solid color. So I'm going to go to the top here where it says solid color, and there's a drop down. And I'm going to select linear gradient. So now I have two different stops. I'm going to select here the one on the right and fill that with this darker color. And since that's a little bit too dark for what I'm looking for, I'm going to just drop the opacity down a little bit to lighten it. I could also add additional stops by just simply clicking on the color gradient and change the color like that, and then remove that stop by just dragging it off of the gradient. So now that we have the background of our splash screen, let's bring in the logo. I'm going to go ahead and select the icon as well as the text logo. Command C. Go back into Adobe XD, Command V to paste it. And I'm going to Shift Command G to ungroup these two objects. So with the icon selected, I'm going to hold down Shift and Option to just reduce the size into the middle here until it's at the right size. Now you can see as I start to change the size and move this object around on the artboard, all these smart guides appear. And they are there to guide us and how to position our objects. Now I can also select this text logo, and as you can see, it looks really different than the one in Illustrator. In Illustrator, there's this really convenient feature in the character panel, flyout menu for all caps. However, this does not translate to Adobe XD, and this feature is not yet available there. We also have tracking set at 50, and sometimes the tracking doesn't come over either. So let's go ahead and check our logo for those two things. So you can see the tracking here in the Properties panel is 0. So we want to make sure that's 50 as well. And I'm going to just have to retype this in all caps. So now that we have the logo in the correct text, we need to resize it. And I can go over here into my Properties panel and manually resize it to a different size, like 90, for example. Or I can actually just select at this handle here and resize it manually by just dragging in. And then I can position it here under the icon. I can select both objects at the same time, Command G to group them. And then I can make sure that they are centered on the artboard by using the Align panel at the top right of the Properties panel to align the objects. And actually, I want to just move this up a little bit and adjust it as needed. Great. Now that we have the splash screen all set, we can move on to creating the home screen or dashboard. So the first step to create the home screen or dashboard is to create a new artboard for it. I'm going to go into the artboard tool here in our Tools panel, select the iPhone X screen size again, and rename this Home. Now I'd like to use some UI elements from the Google Material Design assets as well as the Apple Developer assets. And Adobe XD provides a very convenient quick link in the File menu under Get UI Kits. So you can go to the Apple iOS UI Kit and easily download it from their website. Assets are also available in Photoshop and Sketch formats. We can do the same thing to get the Google Material Design assets for some common Android components. And again, assets are available in multiple formats, including for Sketch, Adobe XD, After Effects, Photoshop, and Illustrator. I've already downloaded the XD files for us to use. I'm going to go ahead into the iOS 11 templates for the iPhone X specifically, since that's what we're designing for. And if we take a look at the entire document, you can see all the different icons and UI elements available here for us to take a look at and examine and work with. So I'm going to start in here with the bars and look at the status bars. And I'm going to select this top status bar here and copy it. And we can use this in our design, and it will make the design look a lot more realistic and like it's on an actual phone. And I'm going to just position this in place like that. I'll use the rectangle tool here in the Tools panel and draw a rectangle underneath. I want to make this 50 pixels high. And I'm going to go ahead and select our icon here of the lotus flower, Command C, bring it into this document, this artboard here. I'm going to resize it. Actually, I'm going to just go ahead and lock the aspect ratio by clicking on this little lock icon here. And I'm going to change the width to 35 pixels. And position this here at the top in place. I'm going to now click the Type tool type some text. And you can see it comes in as the text that was most recently used, which was for the logo. I'm going to select this text and I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to make it 16 point. Instead of thin, I'm going to select medium weight. I'm going to remove the tracking by setting it to 0. And I still want to keep it on our ultraviolet color. I'm going to go ahead and position this text here. And actually, I'm going to reuse this size of text again later in our app. So I'm going to create a character style by simply clicking on the plus symbol with the text selected. And now we can easily reuse this text style again. I'm going to group this text with the icon, Command G, and center it on the artboard. Now I also want to add a navigation icon. So this time I'm going to go into the sticker sheet components, which provides Android elements for us. And you can see all of the different patterns that are common on Android devices. For now, I'm just going to look at the System Icons navigation section. I'm going to just select this hamburger nav icon. Command C to copy it. I'm going to bring it back into our document, Command V. And I'm just going to position this in place as well. Now I'd like to change the color. So I'm going to double click into this symbol. And you can see that the opacity has been set to 54%. I want to make sure that's at 100%. And I'm going to change the color to ultraviolet. Now this came in as a symbol because it was a symbol on the Google Material Design sticker sheet document. So it appears here in our symbol panel. When I changed it to the ultraviolet color and with opacity at 100%, it updated it in the symbol panel so that all instances would reflect this change. I'm going to select this rectangle now, and I'm going to remove the border by unchecking the border here in the Properties panel. So now we have our header element. I'm going to select the entire header together, Command G to group it, and I'm going to create a symbol from this so that we can reuse the header on other pages. So I'm going to simply click this plus symbol here in the symbols area. And now we have our header symbol. So for the splash screen, we created a gradient background as part of the artboard. This time I'd like to add an image. So I'm going to go into my images folder and find the image that I'd like to use and simply drag and drop it into my document. As I align this image up with our artboard that we would like it to mask into, you can see that the mask appears. So I'm going to just position the image and change the size a little bit until I have it just right. And then when I click off of it, you can see it masks to this artboard. Now, the header, though, is stacked underneath the image, and I want to make sure that the header's on top so that none of it is cut off. So I'm going to go into my Layers panel here by clicking on the icon in the bottom left. And I'm going to move this image here in the Layers panel to below the symbol of the header. And now we have everything stacking in the correct order. So while we brought in an image, this image could be potentially a placeholder for a small looping video of some water movement. Or we could have also added other animations or gamification to the app to increase engagement. In general, we want to consider the experience of how the user will feel when interacting with the app, and the dashboard or home page is an essential place for this interactivity to happen. Animation and gamification can delight the users, which will increase the likelihood of continued usage and loyalty and recommendation. So the user will have emotional experiences that will impact the memory and decisions. So it's important that these emotional experiences are positive and provide users with pleasure. So these are all elements that we can consider as we design the home screen, as well as the rest of the app. Next, I'm going to draw a button that will direct users to their primary goal of what they should be doing to participate in this study when they open the app. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here on the screen. And I'm going to create a corner radius, which I can do by just simply dragging one of the circles on the corners, or by going into the Properties panel and setting a specific corner radius. I'm going to change the border color to our ultraviolet color here. And I'm going to add a shadow by checking the shadow box here. Make sure that it's both horizontal and vertical shadow. And that will give a little bit more depth to this button. Now I'm going to go back to my Illustrator document. And I'm going to select these two icons here, Command C and Command V, to paste them into our document. They're grouped together, so I'm going to ungroup them, Shift Command G. I'm going to move this little meditation icon here and decrease the size and just position it into place. I'm going to use my type tool and this text will direct the user into what they need to do immediately. I'm going to increase the size of that text there. And this will orient the participants of the study to complete their daily task. So next I'm going to go to another UI kit that I downloaded from Get UI Kits, wireframes. And this is a UI kit that Adobe XD has provided us with. I'm going to use the mobile one here. And you can see all of the different UI elements that Adobe XD has provided us with so that we can look at different things that can be done and have specific icons that we can use. So to start with, I'm going to select this play button here, Command C. I'm going to bring it into our document. Command V. I'm going to make some changes to it. I'm going to go into the symbol, increase the play button. I'll fill it with a ultraviolet color. Select the outer edge. Make that ultraviolet. I'm going to make the background white. And then I want to make sure that the ellipse is behind the path in the Layers panel so that the actual triangle shows correctly. I'm going to move this icon here into place. And now we have our button. Now that we have our home screen complete, we can go ahead and build the menu. So there are many different types of navigation to consider. They include navigation drawer, bottom nav for items of equal importance, tab bars, priority plus menus, hierarchical menus, and more. For this specific example, we're going to use a navigation drawer because the navigation isn't the focus of the app. We want to tuck it away. So I'm going to just duplicate the home screen by holding down the Option key and dragging and dropping. And I'm going to call this menu. I'm going to select all of the elements on this artboard, Command G to group them. I'm going to go into my layers panel where this group is showing and select the lock icon. We have now locked the background of the home screen. I'm going to select the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle over the entire artboard. I'm going to remove the border and change the fill to black, and then reduce the opacity of this fill so that it creates kind of a shadowing effect. Now I'm going to build the navigation drawer. So draw a rectangle to about there. Remove the border. I'm going to change this fill color to be our light color in our palette here. Draw one more rectangle here for the top header. Remove that border as well and make this ultraviolet. Now I'm going to add the title to the top of menu. And it's typing it, of course, in the ultraviolet color. So I'm going to change that to white so that it shows. And I can add white here to our color picker for easy access. And I'm going to just position this into place. Now I also want a way to close the navigation drawer. So I'm going to go back to the sticker sheet components here. And I'm going to select this X icon. I'm going to position this X icon now into place. I'm going to just lock this rectangle down so that it won't move as we position things. I'm going to go into the group. Make sure the opacity is set to 100%. Change the color so that it shows. And also something that can be considered are UI animations. For example, on the website Transform Icons, you can see how simple nav menus can be turned into a close icon and more. So this is something you can definitely also consider as you add interactivity and animation to delight your users. Now I'm going to build the actual menu list. I'm going to type our first element, which will be home. And I want to use the character style that we used for the top. So I'm going to click on this and it changes it automatically to the other character style. I'm also going to draw a line here, both at the top. I'm going to make this ultraviolet. And I'm going to duplicate this line by selecting it, holding down Option, and dragging it and dropping it about there. Also, I want an image to accompany each navigation item. So I'm going to draw a square by holding down Shift while using the rectangle tool. And I'll remove the border and just align this a little bit better. Command G to group these two items. I'm going to select this top line and bottom line as well. And I'm going to use this distribute spacing here vertically, which is on the top right in the Align panel. And then that way our menu item has been distributed evenly. I'm going to Command G to group this entire item. And now I want to create a repeating grid. so that all of the different navigation items look the same. So I'm going to click on this Repeat Grid button. And you can see there's a new green outline to our group. The Repeat Grid is a great feature of XD where you can repeat grids either vertically or horizontally. In this case, we're going to do a vertical repeat grid. Do 5 items. Just going to drag down here. And I don't want there to be space in between each item in this specific situation. So I'm going to just simply drag up, and our smart guides tell us when we reach 0. Perfect. Now for all these navigation items, I've already created a text document that contains each item that we want to include. And because it's a repeat grid, I can actually drag and drop this text document into the top text item in the grid, and all of the items will follow into the grid in their specific appropriate place. We can do the same thing for the images. So if I go into my images folder, I've ordered each image from 1 to 5, and I can drag and drop them as a unit, and they will position themselves exactly into place. And in this way, we can finish the menu very quickly with all of the elements in the specific order needed. So next, we want to build the actual meditation process. So we're directing the participant of the study into this meditation, and we want to take them through step by step so that they can easily complete it on a daily basis, and so that the data can be collected. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new artboard. I use my artboard tool and just click here for an iPhone 10 screen size. I'm going to rename this meditation. Now I'm going to add a header. So I'm going to use the header symbol that we created here in our symbols panel. Drag and drop it here and position it on this new artboard. Now I want to change both the title and the icon, and I don't want this to be changed on other artboards as well. So I'm going to select this symbol, right click on it, and say Ungroup Symbol. And now it's no longer associated with the symbol in the symbols panel, and we can easily change it without impacting the other artboards. I'm going to use the meditation icon from here and zoom in a little bit. I'm going to lock the aspect ratio here in the properties panel so that I can manually change the size and position this into place. I'm going to remove the lotus icon. And I want to center this on the artboard, so I'm going to click Center Align. And now we have our header. Now for the background of this view, I'd like to add an image texture. So instead of dragging and dropping an image, this time I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to File, Import, go into my Images folder, and I'm going to select this wave image and click Import. Now I'm going to draw a rectangle with the rectangle tool for the area that I'd like this image to fill. Remove the border. I want to use this rectangle as a mask. Select both the image and the rectangle. I'm going to go to Object, Mask with Shape. And now the image appears inside of the rectangle. I'm going to double click into it, position this image, change the size, And I also, since it's going to be a color blur, I'd like to blur it here in Adobe XD. So you can see in the appearance panel, there's this background blur available. I'm going to check on it, but I don't want to actually blur the background. I want to blur the image instead. So I'm going to go to this drop down and do object blur. And now there's a slider where we can control the amount of blur we'd like. And since I really just want it to be a color texture, that's a relaxing color, I'm going to make it a little bit more on the blurred side. And click off of it and you can see that it masks to this shape. Again, I'm going to go into my layers panel. I just want to make sure that this mask group is underneath the top so that they're in the correct stacking order. And I can also, at this point, lock the mask group so that nothing gets moved around as we place new objects on top. So next I'm going to use my type tool. I'm going to add some text to walk the participant through what they need to do in the study. So the first step will be for them to connect their heart rate monitor. And in general, when collecting data for research, you can keep in mind all of the different devices available on the market that are Bluetooth enabled, such as heart rate monitors, whether it be a smartwatch or one that's worn on the chest, devices that measure brain waves, breathing rate, and many, many more. I'm going to increase the font size here. I'm going to center align the font. And I'm going to position this to the center. And I'm probably going to use this text again, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new character style. It's always good to repeat patterns and sizes of different text as well as other elements throughout the app. Now I'm going to create an icon that shows the Bluetooth connection of the heart rate monitor. I'm going to go back into the Wires Mobile XD, and in here there is a Bluetooth icon. I'm going to go ahead and select it, Command C to copy it. I'm going to bring it here onto my screen. I'm going to change the fill color to ultraviolet. Go into the layers panel here and select the symbol. And I actually want to disconnect it to the symbol. And then I'm going to remove the rectangle here around it and just select the path. And then I'm going to increase the size so we can see it a little bit better. Now I'd like to use our place symbol here, the circle that we created. Go back to the assets panel. I'm going to drag and drop this symbol here. Disconnect the symbol from the symbols panel. Delete the play icon. Positioning the Bluetooth icon instead in the center. Group these two items together. Go into the layers panel and make sure that the ellipse is behind the path so that the Bluetooth symbol shows correctly. I'm going to have it fully on to show what it looks like when it's connected. And I'm just going to type some text underneath with instructions. And I'm going to make this much smaller and a lighter weight font as well. And position this into place. Next, I'm going to create a screen that shows the heart rate so that the user can receive feedback into what the monitor is seeing. So I'm going to create a new button here. I'm going to make the radius 10 again. I'm going to just remove the border actually this time. I will add a shadow again though, making sure to have a horizontal as well as vertical shadow so that this pops a little bit. And I want to add the heart rate information. So we have this icon that we had pasted in earlier that we can use here. I'm going to change the size a little bit. I'm going to type some text. So unfortunately the text is white, so we can't see it right now. But I'd like to change the fill color. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool this time and select on this red on this icon and select that. And now the text will become that color. I'm going to make this much larger. Let's see, 18 point. Let's change the weight as well. And position this a little bit better. I can use the align tool to position it as well and center it here on the screen. And let's give the feedback of what the heart rate is before starting the meditation. Make this much larger. We can make this smaller. And position this into place as well. And we can group these items together if we want to. Now we also want to create a button for the user to go to the next screen since there was just one task for this screen. And I'm going to use my rectangle tool again. I'm going to add a border radius. Going to remove the border and change the fill color to ultraviolet. I'm going to add a shadow to the button. I'll also add some shadow to the X radius. And I'm going to add some text on top with instructions. Next. I'd like this to be white. And we can position this a little bit better into place. And we can add an arrow here. We can use our Android icons if we want to. We can add either this type of arrow or this one. I'm going to just select that one. Command C. And Command V to paste this inside. I'm going to click in, make sure opacity is set to 100%. Change the color. Group these two elements together, Command G, and make sure they are centered on the artboard. Great. Now for the actual meditation screen, we're going to just first select this first meditation view. Hold down Option, drag and drop. I'm going to change this to Meditation 2 because this is going to be step 2 in a 4-step process. I'm going to remove some of these elements here. I'm going to keep the next button in consistent location and give it the same appearance. And I want to add a video player for the meditation. So I'm going to go back to this Wires mobile document. Let's see what other elements there are here for us. Down here it says photos and video. So I'm going to go ahead and find a video player. And it looks like we have one right here. Command C. Command V. I'm going to position this in place by just moving it. Going to ungroup the elements, Shift Command G. I kind of like this wave graphic here that is at the bottom, so I'm just going to reposition it and change the color and keep it in. I'm going to actually Command C and paste it into the first meditation view. And I paste it directly into place. I'm going to go into the specific UI components here to fix them. For the context of our app, I'm going to remove this plus symbol and change the color to the ultraviolet color that we're using. And change the timer. You make it around 12 minutes. And we know that each meditation will be 20 minutes per day. Let's also change the color so that it shows on the background. I'm going to change the color of the text here as well. And I'm going to name it and this specific description for today's meditation will be relaxation techniques. Now, as you can see that because we copied this player in from the other document, it's using a different font. We want to be consistent with our font throughout. So I'm going to select this text here. I'm going to change the font from Arial to San Francisco. I don't want it to be the compact display. I want it to be the Pro display. And I'll do that for the time elements as well. Great. Now looking at these different UI components, we don't really want our users to have all of this control. It's not needed for this specific meditation. We can allow them to pause the meditation, but these other UI elements are not needed for this specific task. So I'm going to just simply delete them. Change the color here of our pause button. I'll make it match the other buttons that we're using throughout, make it a little bit larger. Change the border and change the fill color. And now I also want to add an image that represents this video or the image that's showing while the audio track plays. So I'm going to go back into my images folder. And I'm going to simply drag and drop this image. So now we have our meditation player. And once the participant has completed the meditation, we want to give them another view where they can be instructed to disconnect their heart rate monitor and see the results. Giving this feedback will help the user stay engaged. So I'm going to copy the original heart rate monitor meditation screen. I'm going to change the name to 3 since it's the third step. And I'm going to move some of these elements around. I'm going to move the heart rate to the top so that we can give the instant feedback to the participant of what their heart rate was. And let's say the heart rate went down to 60. I'm going to ungroup this object here, move this element up a bit to make some more space. I'm going to give some instructions here. And as you can see, this text goes off of our artboard. It's longer than the line. And that's because we've been using point text, and we want to instead use area text for the specific instance. So I'm going to toggle to area text, and you can see the outside line of the text changed into a dotted line. So I'm going to adjust the size of our text box by just simply pulling in at the handles and pulling down here. And I'll just move this up a little bit. Now the heart rate monitor, we want to show that it's disconnected. So I'm going to select in here to this white circle, and I want to decrease the opacity of the white fill so it looks more faded and unselected. And we don't need this text here anymore. I'm going to move these elements down a little bit. And I want to create a graph representing the heart rate results. So I'm going to increase the size of this top area. And for this graph, I'm going to use the pen tool to do a quick sketch of a graph. And I'm going to select the pen tool, select my first point. You can see the border is currently set to gray. I'd like it to be that red color. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool and select that red. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and create a straight line to start, which will represent the top point. And I could just click through and create all straight lines, but I want to show the curves that are in the graph. So to create a curved line, you just drag as you create the point. And you can see handles will pull out that we can work with. You can see it just goes down. Maybe it flattens out at a certain point, goes down just a little bit more towards the end, and then becomes pretty flat. Now I can hold Shift down again. As I drag down, it shows me where it will line up with the other line. Hold Shift and just close the path by selecting the other line. Now I'm not happy with all of these curves, so I can go into each point and adjust them after the fact. And change them as needed. Can also delete a point if we have too many. Change the way the handles are. To create the curve that we're looking for. Now I also want to add a fill color to this. So I'm going to select the fill, and I'll select this color, but I'll reduce the opacity quite a bit. And we can add labels to our graph as well. And I'll select this color here. Make it a little bit smaller text. And then we can easily see over time how the heart rate changed. Now, the final step of the daily participation in the study will be a survey. So I'm going to create one more screen here. I'll just duplicate the most recent one, holding down the Option key. And I'm going to delete these items. I'm going to use the same text. So I'm going to just move this up here. Same text style. And because it's area text, it automatically went to the second line. We no longer need this Bluetooth symbol. But I'm going to create buttons for the selection. So here's my first button. I'm going to make it a little more transparent. Change the border color to be ultraviolet. I'm going to add a little circle, holding down Shift, using the ellipse tool. I'll make the border on this ultraviolet as well, and increase the border size to 2 points. And then I'm going to add some text. I'll use the Type tool. And I'm going to use our character style here to change the text real quick to be the right color and size. Just move these elements in a little bit. I'm select all 3 elements, Command G to group them. I'm going to create another repeat grid. And I'm going to do a vertical grid of 3 items. I'm going to change the text here. And now we have them all 3 elements updated. On top of the grid, not as part of the grid, I'm going to draw one more circle, holding down the Shift key. I'll fill it with the ultraviolet color. And I'm going to show this first element as what the selected state looks like. Make it just a little bit bigger. And now we can display what the selected state would look like. Now, since this is the final screen in the process, I'm going to change our next button into a Submit button. And I can also remove this right arrow and center Submit on the artboard. Great. So once the participant completes the daily meditation, the person will be brought back to the home screen. However, we want the home screen to change what it's showing. So I'm going to duplicate the original home screen here. I'll call this Home Complete. And instead of today's meditation begin, I might change this text to say complete. I also can change this symbol here to reflect that the daily task has been completed. Let me go back to the sticker sheet components and use this check mark here. going to remove the symbol from the group. See, let's go into our layers panel to make sure the correct thing is selected. I'm going to select just the rectangle and delete it. I'm going to select the path to make sure it increases in size. Make the opacity 100%, and this time actually I'm going to make it green. It's not a button to click on, and green signifies that it has been completed. And then I can align it to the circle, and we can show the completed state. So in this way, we can use all of the Adobe XD tools to create our design and have repeating symbols and patterns and colors throughout the app to make it a cohesive experience.